speaking of disappointment, Tom Brady's disappointed. He's upset. He's upset with the current state of the NFL. He was on the Stephen A. Smith show and had his thoughts about what's wrong with the current state of the National Football League.
I think there's a lot of mediocrity in today's NFL. I don't see the excellence that I saw in the past. I think the coaching isn't as good as it was. I don't think the development of young players is as good as it was. The rules have allowed a lot of bad habits to get into the actual performance of the game. So I just think the product, in my opinion, is less than what it's been. I look at a lot of players like Ray Lewis and Rodney Harrison and Ronnie Lott and guys that impacted the game in a certain way, and every hit they would have made would have been a penalty. You hear coaches complaining about their own player being tackled and not necessarily, why don't they talk to their player about how to protect himself? We used to work on the fundamentals of those things all the time. Now they're trying to be regulated all the time. Offensive players need to protect themselves. It's not up to a defensive player to protect the offensive player. A defensive player needs to protect himself. I didn't throw the ball to certain areas because I was afraid players were going to get knocked out. That's the reality. Wow. I didn't throw it to the middle when I played Ray Lewis because you knock him out of the game, and I couldn't afford to lose a good player.
So that was Tom Brady talking with Stephen A. Smith.
Stuff, man.
Now,
real talk.
Aaron Rodgers also doubled down on it. He was on the Pat McAfee show starring A.J. Hawk yesterday, and he basically said and went on to point out, listen, it's big picture, more the softening of society. So those are two legends, guys that have played the game for a long time. Yeah,
are you going to gloss over that comment like that?
I mean, listen, he took an opportunity. You want to hear Rodgers? I mean, he's got a
I guess. Like, I kind of want to hear it now.
All right, so let's listen to Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show starring A.J. Hawk.
If I'm looking at this from a real big picture, like there's a softening of society that has definitely caused things like this. Look at all the sports. What happened to hockey? Hockey doesn't have the enforcer position anymore. Why? Because we need the fighting out of hockey. It's too violent.
Stage.
And people don't want to see the violence on TV. I think people want to see football be a collision sport. And not, to where guys are getting mangled on the field, but they enjoy the big hits. And there's certain players who you just knew were big hitters and would push the line of what's a cheap shot and what's a legit hit.
So that was Rodgers talking about it and weighing it as well, too.
Well, I mean,
it's funny as quarterbacks saying it, though.
Well, because I think we're the ones that, especially around the protections, because this is where it all started, I feel like, was when Tom Brady got his knee taken out. And the protections for what the NFL deems as defenseless players started to get ramped up. So that injury occurred to Tom Brady, what, is it 2008? Was that the year?
Yeah, right after the near-perfect season.
Yeah, so, you start getting now quarterbacks, you can't hit them, you have to hit them in a certain frame, certain area. And it's evolved now to the point where literally, if you're a defensive player, you can't fall on top of the quarterback. You have to somehow sack the quarterback, and then you have to protect. You have to not worry about yourself, but protect the quarterback and yourself as you fall to the ground. Imagine living in that world. So, you've got this instance of the true protections for the quarterback because they're the face of the franchise and the face of the league. It really started then, and it's evolved now where it's been extended to other players. Because I think in part fantasy's become so big. Offensive scoring is so important to the league. I mean, any fan will tell you, and you, if you did a study, you hear, okay, no one wants to see a 13-10 ball game. They'd rather see a 30-27, a 40-36 game where there's more scoring. That's just the reality of how the fan base takes into account the excitement of the game. They want to see scores. It's one of the reasons why I feel like soccer doesn't resonate as much with a lot of people in America. I know there's a huge fan base for soccer in some ways, but it's not like Europe. It's not like other international countries. And it's in part because, there's just not a lot of scoring. I mean, it's constant play, but it's okay. I'm really getting that jacked up about a 1-0 game. Now, don't get me wrong. I like soccer. I appreciate it for what it is. But there's other sports where you look at it and you go through baseball. When baseball was at its peak, it was a steroid era. Dudes were launching balls left and right.
Hell yeah.
And scoring home run after home run. That was fun to watch. The back and forth between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, and then Barry Bonds and how amazing he was at the end. That's what we like. And because there's been such a concern about quarterbacks getting hurt And we've seen that this year. We've witnessed that as far as scoring being down, how many unders have been hitting on a weekly basis. And then on top of that, the playmakers who are making those plays. I mean, it got to the point when I was playing where, you're considered defenseless as a receiver when you're in the act of catching the football. So now the manner in which you're hit has changed for the defense so that player is protected and he doesn't get hurt. Well, to Tom Brady's point, you knew as a quarterback you weren't going to throw the ball into a tight window. And you know what happens a lot of times? You ever seen when a quarterback throws behind a guy who's on an in cut or a slant route? Do you want to know why that happens more often than not?
So they don't get decapitated?
Yeah, because they feel the defensive player coming. And they're actually trying to throw to a spot where that player is either going to catch it or it's going to be incomplete. But either way, they're not going to get blown up. It is literally a natural human reaction for quarterbacks where they've done this 1,000 times. They feel when there's a tight window and they feel where their guy's running and the guy running towards them. They're not going to throw them into that. Like, it's been drilled out of you. You can try all you want. And when you see quarterbacks throw into that, oftentimes it's because they don't see that defender coming towards their receiver. I don't know any quarterback who would throw a wide receiver into that. Or they literally just missed or that inaccurate with it. But for the most part, they're always going to end up throwing behind because they want to protect that guy. It's a subconscious thing. And so what happened is once those rules changed, where the receivers in the act of catching were considered defenseless. I mean, you could go back, and we talked about Drew Brees earlier. The Saints had a name for it. They called it NAP, a non-aggressive position. And the whole point of it was they were going to throw those seam routes. Remember when they used to throw to Jimmy Graham up the seam all the time?
Yeah.
Well, think about having a 6'6" tight end that can run like a deer and is a big target, can elevate and catch. And guess what? He gets protection.
He can't hit him.
So now you could throw that ball up into harm's way and into a bunch of traffic because they can't hit him like they used to. And so as long as the defender had his back turned, all right, to you as the quarterback, as he's chasing that guy, that was a non-aggressive position. You were going to throw that ball up into that tight window, into that space, up that seam, because you knew he was protected and the ball was protected because the DB can't see it. Now, if the DB's looking back at the quarterback and has vision on the wide receiver, they call that aggressive position. So the only reason you don't throw that ball is not because of tight coverage. You wouldn't throw it because that DB has the chance of picking that ball off. But now, like, those tight windows have nothing to do anymore with guys not getting hurt because they're protected. The game has changed dramatically for that reason. And it's changed the manner in which how quarterbacks throw the football, even when you got an enforcer in the middle. Guys like Bobby Wagner, guys like Fred Warner who are going to be hitters, right? Their strengths, their skill set can't be on full display because of the way the league has changed the rules. And it's unfortunate. It really is.
The problem with it, and look, Rodgers alluded to this in another clip where he said, the moving target. Like, that's the part that always bothers me is how they're expecting these defenders in real time to be able to adjust how they're going to lay a hit on somebody. When a receiver's moving or a ball carrier's moving and everybody's trying to avoid contact or get out of the way, and yet we're punishing those guys based on a still frame when there's no still frame in that moment in time. It's a moving target. Like the strike zone is moving around. And the comp I always think about is if you were a pitcher, imagine trying to throw to your target, but it's moving all around the plate. Like you can't try throwing a strike. And they're expecting these guys to throw strikes with their hits. And if they don't, they get popped 15 yards and then get a check in the mail for, here's $35,000 and you're out. And all of this being said, I don't think it's ever going to go back to what it was. Like, if anything, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Like, that's what it feels like to me. And so, nobody likes it, but nothing's going to be done about it.
Why do you think they're pushing flag football? I mean, seriously, this is like a conspiracy theory. Why do you think everyone's pushing flag football? It's more inclusive, and there's way less of a chance of injury. Guys can play longer, the whole thing.
Why would that
there's a reason why they're pushing a sport like flag football, which is not football.
Why would that become an Olympic sport? And all these years we've been playing football. Why didn't football become an Olympic sport? Why did entry into the Olympics have to be flagged?
It would like the NBA being like, all right, we're going to have horse in the Olympics next year. All right,
in a way, yeah, you're right.
Who's up?
You know what I don't understand too is like this is
Knockout.
America. If we're gonna try to get something to be an Olympic sport, we want to flaunt our strengths.
Hell yes.
It's almost like putting on like a military show, like where other countries like have the tanks and everything else come out. They go out the parade, everyone's waving the flag. It's like the Olympics are all opportunity to be like, no, this is our sport. It's called American football, and we're going to beat the ever-living crap out of everyone else, and it's going to send a signal to every other country out there that wants to test us, okay?
Damn right.
We're still the USA.
Damn right.
That's what I don't get about this. It's like, oh, it's flag? Oh, okay. Like, you're not flexing on the rest of the world like America usually does and can.
Hell yeah.
That's probably the most disappointing thing for me. It's like when we really wanted to in basketball, we put out the dream team and it was like, oh, okay, no one's even close to as good as the U.S., right? Like, why not do the same thing with the Olympics, with the actual American tackle football and not flag football? That would have been way more fun to watch.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm into it.